Welcome, everybody. Delighted that you're joining us for this session of Unlocking Your $1 Million Mindset. And the reality is the university is here for one purpose only. And its purpose is to empower you and to shortcut your learning curve, both professionally as well as personally. And I'm trying to remember who said this, and I now can't remember, and maybe somebody in the chat window can say it. I think it was somebody from Amway, and I'll quote exactly, God didn't make any junk. And everyone is born with a $1 million mindset. And it's our responsibility to unlock that $1 million mindset. And we can promise you with Zango, with the founders, with the compensation plan, with the products, and if you only knew what I knew that was coming in September, you probably wouldn't get much sleep. So for those that are guests on this call and don't know who I am, my name is Sandi Cohen. I'm married to my childhood sweetheart, Ed, and we're probably married more years than most of you are old. We are part of what is known as the Sweet 16, and we don't talk about this enough. But in my former companies, and you know, it only took me 10 years to become an overnight success, but in my former companies, and I worked my heart out in my last company for 7 years full-time, and we were probably one of their top 10. I never won a trip. I never even won a cup of coffee or going out to lunch with a founder. And when we came into Zango, which was November of 2002, they were running a contest called the Sweet 16. And this contest was that they were going to take the first 16 businesses that hit Premier. And I said to my sweetie, I said, Ed, we're going to do whatever it takes to win that trip. And we did. And instead of taking 16 people, in fact, I was at a meeting in Utah, and we had made Premier, and we were probably 6 months into the contest, and there were probably about 30 people in the room. And I was sitting next to my beloved Joe Morton, and I put my arm around Joe, and I said, Joe, you know, what's the tiebreaker for the Sweet 16 contest? Because it looks like there's going to be more than 16 winners. And he said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, if it's Sweet 16, what's the tiebreaker? Because in my former company, they only took 7 couples, and there were all these tiebreakers, and I always missed it by one person or one pill or one bottle. And he looked at me and he said, Sandi, in Zango, we don't do tiebreakers. We will take whoever makes it. And I ran out of the room, and I got on the cell phone, and I called every one of my leaders and said, come on, he's taking everybody that makes it. And that first trip, instead of Sweet 16, it was really Sweet 27. So if you've ever been in network marketing before or in another company, you know how rare that is for sure. So there's actually 2 books that we have contributed to. One is a new book called The Change, and I will be sending out an email if people would like copies. And, of course, Millionaire Women in Network Marketing by MGM Mulvaney. But here's something that is so important for everyone to understand. And if you're not on your computer, you can't see the beautiful slides that I've done. There is an iceberg of your conscious mind versus your subconscious mind. And the reality is, and I don't know whether most people know this, but we do things based on our subconscious mind, not necessarily our conscious mind. So if you're on this call or you're on this webinar, pat yourself on the back because you are the small percentage of people who commit to CANI, constant and never-ending improvement. And you've made a decision for success. And failure is not in your vocabulary. It's not even an option. So when you look at the bottom half of the submerged iceberg, on the left side, you'll see resistance, failure, sacrifice, disappointment. Yeah, even the leaders go through this. And, they think of, the frustration that they're going through, because we want it more sometimes for other people than they want it for themselves. But we are persistent. We never give up, and we know that we are on track for the right side of that submerged iceberg, which gets you what we call POM, peace of mind. So you are dedicated. You are going to work hard. You're going to develop good discipline and good habits, because anyone, and I mean this sincerely, I don't care how old you are, I don't care your background, your education, anyone can succeed in Zango. And the reality is, this wonderful company has created more success stories in the shortest period of time than any other company. And that was with an older comp plan. And as good as that was, that created more success stories than any other company, the new comp plan is just mind-blowing. And this is not a training on the comp plan. So if you're not up to date on the newest enhancements, unlike other companies, when they say they're going to enhance a comp plan, you could be almost guaranteed your check is going in the wrong direction. So Zango University has all the training on the compensation that you will need. So reach out to your upline sponsor or mentor. Now, tonight, our first co-host, and we like to co-host these calls because as an ex-school teacher, you learn by teaching. You learn by doing. And we're almost at the end of this entire series with Brian Tracy. And in the university, we have all of the masters, from Stephen Covey to Robert Kiyosaki to Les Brown. I mean, the list goes on and on and on, all at no extra charge. It's all part of the university. But, sometimes, when we say, who's your favorite founder, it's usually the one that's in the room. But who's my favorite master? They're all my favorites. But I think my very, 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 very favorite is Brian Tracy, because when he teaches, he really digs into that submerged subconscious mind. And I only wish I had all this when my kids were growing up. Oh, my goodness. So anyway, let me do a proper introduction for my good friend, Jo. And we have a lot in common because she's also from the East Coast, and she's from Brooklyn, but she grew up in Alabama. Huge family, 9 brothers and sisters. She married her best friend. We do that sometimes, and have 2 great, funny, talented stepchildren. She has a bachelor's in psychology, and if I remember correctly, her dad actually had a health food store. So she really knows about products and ingredients. And she worked for a long time for a checking company and became a manager within 1 year, and worked there until the company closed 7 years later, which is a very common story when the economy turned upside down 4 or 5 years ago. So she got her certified driver's license and decided to go on the road with her husband, David, as a truck driver. And she's been doing that for 9 long years. And our goal is to get Jo off the road. Right, Jo?
Most definitely, Sandy.
Absolutely.
This is my ticket.
You bet it is, and we're going to do everything to help you. And boy, are we going to celebrate when that day happens. So I'm
Oh, yeah.
myself out.
I might have to do cartwheels.
Yeah. And you're going to share with us, how you felt with the sessions on achieving financial independence, as well as the qualities that are of self-made millionaires. So I'm going to mute myself out and turn it over to you, dear.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Sandi. Well, Brian makes me work. I am not the most detailed person, but Brian is. And that is what is so wonderful about what we've been doing with Brian Tracy. He makes you work on yourself and really gives you some details that you probably have never thought or even contemplated, right? What I loved is what he started off with achieving financial independence, and he talked about self-made millionaires from the 1950s on. And it was incredible to find that even with the economy dipping a few years ago, it's still climbing. We're at about 10.1 million self-made millionaires at this point as of last year. And in 1950, it was only 100,000. And in 1980, 1.8 million. And I think network marketing definitely has something to do with it. And I definitely know that Zango has something to do with that. And I think people are more and more attracted to what we're doing, especially since the economy did its little dippy-doo there. The rules of achieving financial independence is simple, he says. He says, spend less than you earn or save or invest the difference. It sounds real simple, and you would think more people would do it. But, sometimes we don't always do the simplest things, right? It's a little more complicated than that. He says 10% of every dollar is yours. And I'll be honest, in the past that was a very hard concept because all I could think about was paying bills, taking care of any debts and that kind of thing. I never thought about, it should be mine, something that I keep for myself, right? He says $100 per month will make you a millionaire. I'm like, when he broke down the numbers on that, it's like, wow, that's so simple, isn't it? And it's true, but, I think most of us don't think that far ahead when we're 20 years old. Even though we feel like we can conquer the world, we're just, basically getting our legs, so we're not thinking that far ahead always. He says, prefer in advance financial independence over status, which I really love. And I also love the stories he gave. And I have found this to be true when you hang out with the right people. Most millionaires aren't flashy, and you wouldn't know they're a millionaire if you met them. But they've got the right mindset, and they're not about just trying to keep up with the Joneses. They're looking far ahead and trying to keep their finances where they are. They wanted to be independent, and that's why they got there. And we're all striving to be that, and that's why we'll get there. He says, once you put it away, never touch it, which is true. You got to put it out of your mind, pretend like it doesn't exist. Otherwise, you're going to be always trying to grab it and touch onto it the very moment it seems like there's a life crisis. And that's a testament to, our character. We have to learn how to not always be grasping for the easy way out. Sometimes we got to think our ways out of problems, and sometimes it's not necessary to go into something or touch what you really want to say for your future, right? The values of money has never changed, he says. Money goes and stays where it's appreciated. And this has also been a concept that I've had to kind of like get it past. I used to have the limiting thoughts of, what people would say, money is the root of all evil, all kinds of stuff, which is totally misquoted, misunderstood. But once you understand that money is just a tool. It's just a tool. And that's all it is. It helps you kind of understand. And if you think about it like that, you want to treat your tools really well. You won't leave your tool outside so it can get rusted on, and you want to know where your tools are at all times. The same with money. You need to keep up with how you spend your money, and he talks about that. And you want to take care of it, So, and he also described how people who don't keep up with it, how they treat their money. You wouldn't think that the simplest little things was a reflection of what's going on in our subconscious, as Sandi pointed out. But it's the smallest things sometimes we don't realize we're doing. You know, if you're rumpling up your money and just putting it in your pocket, or, you know, you don't know how much you have in your account or how much your bills are, if you're not organized in that sense, then basically you're saying, you know, money's not that important. And if it's not that important, why would it stay, right? And I love this. He mentioned a Japanese proverb: making money is like digging in the sand with a pin. Losing money is like pouring water on the sand. I was like, wow. I love that quote. It's so true, isn't it? And so he goes on to say, study every details of a business or investment. And, you know, I always find this very fascinating. Oftentimes, we spend more time investigating or more time on things that are really not that important sometimes. I know I had in the past. And the things that we really need to get details on, really need to spend time and details on, we're not putting in all the time to really investigate. And that's important. That's important because it's your money. You don't want to lose it. You know, he mentioned, you know, that, you know, and this is such a concept. I've heard this concept over and over again, and he's so right. He says, you know, as an entrepreneur, as a self-made millionaire, we're not about gambling. We're not about trying to lose our money or just risk it to risk. That's what you know, if you ever, you know, I'm sure we've all heard it, you know, entrepreneurs about risk-taking and all of this kind of stuff. But it's not about risk-taking. Actually, it's about calculated planning and strategizing and staying consistent and persistent. But that's what, you know, the concept is, oh, risk-taker, risk-taker. And no, we're not about just risking and losing money, because, you know, that does not make a millionaire. And then he mentions, use the law of accumulation to be wealthy. Remember, if you love something, set up a force field around it. For whatever amount you have, build a force field around it. And I love this concept, and I'm going to use this with some people. You know, if you ever mention to somebody you need to save 10% of what you make, and they might come back to you with, well, you know, I don't have enough to save anything. You know, all my bills take all my money. And he says, well, start saving at 1%. And I thought, wow, that's a great idea. Just, you know, for someone to just get started, just start saving at 1%. Hardly anyone's going to miss that. People spend that on just junk food alone. On things that'll make them fat, on things that won't make them healthy or live long either. But, yeah, I mean, 1%, you're not going to even think about that. That's less than a Snickers bar. It's just gradually increased to 20% over time. And I think that's a wonderful concept in helping people learn how to save. And then he goes on to say, use the two great principles of wealth. Make compound interest work in your fortune. Use dollar cost averaging and paying in cash instead of making payments. And I tell you, we definitely live in a society of just, you know, making payments. I learned a long time ago. A lot of times the whole making payment thing, I mean, you're going to pay a whole lot more money if you just paid it in cash. And then he goes on to say, practice frugality in all your financial decisions. And it was so funny. He says, be like, you know, the song of a canary, cheap, 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 cheap. But don't confuse that, being frugal, with being miserly. Frugal means careful about spending money or using things when you do not, you know, need it. And use money or supplies in a very careful way. And it comes from the word virtuous in Latin and the fruit to enjoy. So, you know, there's virtuousness and enjoyment and just being frugal and not wasteful with how you spend your money. Miserly means hating to spend, and that's not the same concept, not even the same thought, right? So I love that. Then he goes on to talk about 21 qualities of a self-made millionaire, which I love this. Of course, he says, dream big dreams. I've always been a big dreamer. But, you know, even in life, even us big dreamers sometimes get kicked, and it can throw you off and make you not want to dream is big. You know, everybody around, if, you know, some people around you might have, you know, like, okay, you need to come down a bit. And that's something that I love about what we do, you know, as far as reminding ourselves of what being a millionaire mind is. We help each other, you know, we all support each other in our dreams. And sometimes, you know, there are people who really can't see it. They are never going to see it, and that's okay. He says, create a dream list. Make a list and imagine your life with no limitations. Dream big. Live on purpose and be unstoppable. That's what I say, right? Do what you love to do, he says. Only then will you have the energy to overcome obstacles. You know, that's the kind of enthusiasm. That's where enthusiasm comes in. You know, when you dream big and you're on fire, you know, nothing's going to stop you. I don't care how crazy your life gets or what happens, you know, you're just driven, and you'll make it eventually. You'll get there. You've done it in the past for whatever goals you wanted. And that's, I think, a concept sometimes we can forget, that any goals we've ever met, at some point we had obstacles. At some point it didn't look like we would make it. But because we wanted it bad enough, we got through it. He said, decide what you enjoy. Find a way to make a living. And, you know, not only that, but, you know, this is a do-it-yourself. We have to work on ourselves. And this is what's so great about these assignments. You know, we're working on ourselves, getting ourselves together, helping ourselves get to a higher level, a different way of thinking, or just tuning ourselves in, really, to what the talents we already have as far as having a millionaire mind. Commit to excellence in your chosen field. You know, if you're going to, you know, my dad used to say, if you're going to do it, don't do it halfway. Do it at your very best, right? If you're going to do it, you might as well do your best. Why do it halfway? Develop your unique talents and abilities. And each of us have unique talents. I mean, it's like a fingerprint. You know, each one of us has something so unique and different from another person. And sometimes if you just tune into that, you know, other people can pick up on that. They're drawn to that because usually it's something they don't have, right? Because it's unique. And we're drawn to uniqueness often. We're drawn to that sort of thing. Accept 100% responsibility. All self-millionaires accept responsibility for themselves. They're self-reliant. I think this is so true. And that goes for all entrepreneurs. They're not looking for someone else to give them a paycheck. They're going to just do what they need to do to be successful, right? Then it says develop a clear sense of direction. You know, Brian Tracy really harps on this, and he is definitely about clarity. That's what he is so detailed with what he's teaching us, is to get more clear as to what we need to do and who we need to become and what our dreams are and what our plans are as far as being successful. And I think there's energy also that comes out of having clarity. Refuse to consider the possibility of failure. Yeah, there's no way to, even a runner, you know, an Olympic star, a runner, or anyone trying to succeed or, you know, cross the finish line. You can't do that thinking I'm going to fail. You have to have the idea, I'm going to make it. I'm going to be the winner. Otherwise, there's no sense in even getting in the race, right? And he said, failure is just a way to be more intelligently starting over again. This was a great Henry Ford quote. And that's so true. You know, if you fail, you just kind of sit back and think, okay, wait a minute, what did I do wrong here? Oh, there's a better way of doing it. And those lessons that are learned, usually you don't forget. You kind of remember from now on. He says, dedicate yourself to lifelong learning. And that's so true. And that's what we're doing, right? Develop a workaholic mentality. I cannot tell you how many times I have heard that word thrown out, being a workaholic. But there's nothing wrong with that. And I love that. He says, use the 40-plus formula. You know, 40 hours a week is not going to make you a fortune. You know, and I love that he put it out there like that. And that's so true. It's what you do after the 40 hours is going to count. Number 10, get around the right people. And that's why we do this with the mastermind, right? We're getting around the right kind of people. Be prepared to climb from peak to peak. And we all know this, right? Life is peaks and valleys, ups and downs. And, we have to be like Rocky Balboa, and just not give up. Just keep fighting and getting through it, because at the end we know we're going to win. Develop resilience, he says, resolve and advance that you will bounce back and not break. And, Lisa Nichols, she says, you got to develop your bounce back muscle. And you can look at it physically, but it's also a mental thing. Number 13, unlock your inborn creativity. And I thought this was really interesting. It does take some creativity, when you're trying to figure out how to solve problems. And it does help us as far as figuring out how to be better service to others. Become an unshakable optimist. Number 14, dedicate yourself to serving others. And that's what we're all about. That's what this company is all about. That's what Zango is all about. That's what all these wonderful products are all about, right? It's helped us and made our lives better. We just want to share that with everyone else. Develop a reputation of speed and dependability, and this is so true. There's nowhere that I've ever been in any career that people weren't looking for speed and dependability. Whether it's working at a check company or driving from point A to point B, people want efficiency. They want to know they can depend upon you and that you're going to do it in a very swift and timely manner. 17, be impeccable and honest and with yourself and others. Number 18, concentrate single-mindedly on one thing at a time. 19, be decisive. Just make a decision. I had someone recently ask me about a decision they needed to make, and I was like, you got to make a decision here at some point. And we got to take responsibility for that decision when we make those decisions, and then just go forward. We would never get anywhere if we just, I think of being like in a car traveling. You have to decide whether to go right or left or right. And, if you get a little lost, you can turn around and ask for help along the way or directions, or you'll find some other way of getting there, but you'll eventually get there, right? And then number 20, back everything you do with twin qualities of courage and persistence. And, when you're in it, when you're in the fight, I don't think you really think much as far as having courage. And I don't think really courageous people think about themselves as being courageous. I think their minds and eyes are so on the goal at the time. They're just in it, and they're persistent. They just know they're just not going to give up. So they end up being courageous. And that's where your courage comes. You don't even think about it. You're just in there. You just got to make it, right? And then he's the number 21, which was like a bonus, practice self-discipline. And I think self-discipline covers over all of this, because all of these things is you have to have self-discipline in order to be successful. There's no way to be successful without self-discipline. So I think I got through all of that. Sandy, are you still there?
Yeah, absolutely. Great job, Joe. And, it's interesting as we listen to Brian Tracy and we listen to you, and we're going to listen to Mark. Some of this will all be redundant, but it takes 6 exposures, and he talked about this. It takes 6 exposures for things to absorb. So I thank you for sharing, and next, we've got our good friend, the new grandfather, his first grandchild, hopefully of many, is Mark Barman from Northern California. And Mark's a really, and congratulations, Mark. I mean, just your life will never be the same once you have grandchildren. So congratulations again that everybody is healthy and everybody survived the delivery with no complications. But Mark grew up in the Midwest, Iowa and Chicago, and really smart, went to MIT, and then off to graduate school at Stanford. So really, really smart. And worked in Silicon Valley and actually has developed software for most of his career. And in 2003, he moved to Northern California to grow into the housing market. And we all know what happened there when it crashed. But he got involved with network marketing in the 90s, and he's tough. He did Amway, and he built a direct distributorship in Amway. I never did Amway. Almost wish I did because of their wonderful training, but I understood the comp plan and knew that if I didn't sell books and tools and do events, I wasn't going to make any money on soap suds and toothpaste. But anyway, Mark has the classic 2 kids and dog, and his kids are happy, productive, and now a grandpa. And Zango is his future for freedom. And, you know, I just might add that if you're listening to this, it's because you want more for yourself, your family, and others. And that could be different for all of us. I mean, there could be 18-year-olds on the call. There could be people on the call like my age. And actually, I think Papa G and I are the same age. There aren't many people older than us in the Zango family. There is one gentleman, and he's in his late 80s, believe it or not, going to all the events and building a team. But in the book, if you've never read it, The Road Less Traveled by Dr. Scott Peck. And someone gifted me that book, it's got to be about 21 years ago, when we were $450,000 in debt from the sale of our businesses by buyers who defaulted. And even though we won in court, the only winners were the attorney. And it was interesting in this book, and I think, if I'm correct in my memory, the very first page of the first chapter, Dr. Peck says, life is difficult. There are obstacles, and it's just a part of life. So how you deal with those obstacles, whether you go around them, under them, over them, the bottom line is everyone who has success didn't get there without obstacles and failure. In fact, I think if I'm correct, and Mark, maybe you can confirm this, I think he said the average millionaire, and I can't even remember, I think he said had 17 failures, but took them 22 years to earn $1 million. And look at Zango, over 140 members of the million and multi-million dollar club in less than 10 years. So I think that's amazing. So, Mark, I'm delighted to turn the call over to you so you can share with us as well about your thoughts on these 2 sessions with Brian Tracy.
Thanks, Sandi. Can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
Great. Thanks so much for all the kind words. Joe, what magnificent teaching. My goodness. That was just fantastic.
A little louder, Mark. A little louder.
Okay. Yeah.
Fading a little bit. There you go.
Great. Joe, thanks so much. That was such terrific teaching. My goodness. There is such fantastic material in here. And Joe, you did just a magnificent job going through that. Every time I hear this stuff, and I'm going to go back and listen to these again and again, because I know that it's so packed with great information. Every time I hear it, I'm going to learn something new and hear something different. Something else is going to pop up. So, you know, you can hardly do it justice in 15 minutes, but it changes life as it goes. So Sandi, you're right about the failures. I think, as a matter of fact, Robert Kiyosaki went bankrupt 3 different times before he finally, hit success that lasted. Can't wait to hear him talk at Rush. Well, here, the Achieving Financial Independence section, there were 4 points in there that impacted me the most. Those simple rules. I mean, how much more simple does it get? Did you get to be financially independent by spending less than you earn and saving the difference? Right? I mean, it's so much common sense in there, but it's so hard to do. So back in the old Amway, we used to say, well, there's 2 things you can do. You can either shrink your expenses or you can expand your income. And, of course, we all try to shrink our expenses, and then we find out that no matter how much we try to do that, there's still more month than there is money. So the question is, how do you go about expanding your income? And that's why we're here. At this point, we are earning more than you're spending each month, as Robert Kiyosaki calls that. That's when you're out of the rat race. That's the goal, to have more coming in than is going out each month. Brian said, save 10% of what you earn and live off the other 90%. And every time I hear that, my eyes just roll, right? And Brian expresses this perfectly when he talked about people, their eyes avoid me when I say that. He says if you're a normal person, you don't save 10% or 20% a month. You're spending everything you make. You've got a nice big chunk of debt, and you dream of someday being out of debt, and maybe even someday winning the lottery, right? But Brian is the only one I've ever heard say, well, if you can't do that 10% right away, then start with 1% or even $1 a day. And doing this will change that vibration to one of accumulation. And soon that money is going to be glowing with energy. So you start with 1%, you put it away, you don't touch it, and then you kick it up to 2% as soon as you can, and then you grow it from there. The third point was prefer financial independence to status. This really hit me when he said self-made millionaires don't get new cars. They go out and they study Consumer Reports and other places. They find out what the good quality cars are. Then they go in and get a low mileage, high quality, 2 to 3 year old used car, and they avoid paying all that huge depreciation cost. He says they'll keep the car for another 6 years, and then they'll go repeat and find another good quality car. And then the 4th point in this chapter that really struck me is once you put that money into savings, don't touch it. It's not, here's my kitty of stuff that when something really exciting comes along, I'm going to spend it all of that. Start another fund for that. But have this fund that you put the money in the savings, you don't touch it, that's your security for your future, it's your security for retirement. It's something you can leverage into investments. And it's something that really supports your positive attitude because you know that when life's problems do come along, you've got a safety cushion. Then part 6, the 21 qualities of self-made millionaires. All 21 of these are things that can be learned, and they can be learned by practice. As Brian said, it's more who you are on the inside that counts. He quoted Les Brown. Les said, if you want to accomplish something that you've never done before, then you need to become someone who you've never been before. Right? So we've got to have that lifelong learning to learn the things that we need to learn to be able to accomplish the things that we want to accomplish. Dream big dreams. Brian talked about back from the future thinking. I'd never heard of this before. Project yourself forward 5 years, he said, and then look back and ask, what did I do to get here? And write that down. That'll help you make the plan to get from where you are to where you want to be. Another point is commit to excellence in your chosen field. Decide to become excellent. He said, resolve to pay any price to get to the top 10%. And then I got to say that should be resolved to pay any ethical price to join the top 10%. We've all seen what happens to people who decide not to do things ethically. So resolve to pay any ethical price to join the top 10%. Decide you're tired of being treated insignificantly. That really resonated with me. Another big point for me was refuse to consider the possibility of failure. Fear of failure is the number one reason for failure. How funny is that? But it's so true. You're afraid you're going to fail, so you don't try. I've had this, and what it's been for me is, if I try this and I fail, then what have I got left? You're kind of looking in the big abyss. But the thing to realize is that failure isn't a death sentence. It's you deciding to quit that's a death sentence. A failed attempt is okay. It's a learning opportunity. Now, Henry Ford said failure is just an opportunity to more intelligently begin again. It's not trial and quit. It's trial and error. If at first you don't succeed, try again. Learn from your experiences. Build on what you've learned. Seek the advice of your mentors. And try again. Thomas Watson, founder of IBM. I love this. What a quote. He said, if you want to be successful faster, you must double your rate of failure. Right? Failure is an essential part of the success process. It was a David Susskind interview of 4 millionaires that Sandi mentioned. It revealed that between the 4 of them, they had 17 failures among them on their way to achieving success. So failure is just really a stepping stone. You need to get around the right people. We need to protect our attitudes. This is so important. You get around people who can manage you. You form a mastermind group, just like we've done here, to get support, to create synergy, and to learn from, especially learning from other people's mistakes. That's the best way to take advantage of mistakes. You don't have to make them all yourself. The best part of a mastermind group, you can learn about mistakes other people made, and then you don't have to make them. You can just get the lessons and move past them. Develop resilience and bounce back, that bounce back muscle. God, I love that idea of a bounce back muscle. Make the decision that no matter what happens, you'll always bounce back. I forget who he was who was interviewing, some fellow who'd been successful. Some journalist was talking about the time when that person had been broke and said, what was it like to have been poor? And the response was, I've been broke lots of times, but I've never been poor. It's an attitude. You're always going to come back. Anybody can bounce back from things and anybody can bounce back when things are going well. But when things are tough, that's when you really need that bounce back resolve. And it's a group like this that's a great place to get it. Another point, unlock your inboard creativity. You are a genius. What I talked about, get a pencil and paper, write down 20 answers to what can I do to achieve my goal in the next 12 months. And you have to write down all 20. So it's a real good thing to do in that early morning, quiet time, golden hour to tweak those creative muscles and come up with 20 things you can do in order to achieve that goal in the next 12 months. And practice mind storming. Next point, so incredibly important, be impeccably honest with yourself and others. Be true to yourself in everything. And to others, live the truth, tell the truth, and be the truth. And then that last point, self-discipline. The foundation of character and the guarantor of great success. It's the ability to make yourself do what you should do, when you should do it, whether you feel like doing it or not. And if you take that coupled with persistence, you will become unstoppable. Thank you very much. Sandi, back to you.
Oh, thank you, Mark. Thank you so much, and I loved your take on what impressed you the most. And, you know, there's a common thread in what it takes for success. And success is different for different people. But as you said, it's commitment, it's self-discipline, it's persistence, it's knowing that sometimes you take 2 steps forward and a step backward. And I love the way, it's not just Brian Tracy that says this. Most of the masters say this, is do you do things even when you don't feel like doing them? It's, you know, and this happens to me all the time. I mean, you know, I never leave the house without my Zalo Pro packs with my card inside and a Zango juice single in the 3D pack. And, you know, we're sitting and having dinner, which we do a lot in Vegas, obviously, because for locals, they have all these twofers, you know, 2 for 1. And I'm sitting there and I'm saying to Eddie, oh, I really don't feel like talking to this waiter or waitress. And he looks at me and I go, yeah, I know. Never leave a situation without making something happen. And even though I don't feel like doing it, I do it anyway. So that's the kind of commitment you need to make in order to get good at what you do and what you say. And, you know, Mark, you talked about projecting 5 years forward. And in our Getting Started training, for years, we have suggested, I mean, we can't force anybody to do anything. But I remember I did this. I wrote a story. It was like I was the director of my own movie. And this is when, at a time, we couldn't pay the electric bill and the phone bill at the end of the month. And the only reason they didn't shut off the electric is because my mother was on life support, who we were home taking care of at home with Alzheimer's and breast cancer. So by law, they couldn't shut off the electric. But I remember hearing this from Brian Tracy many, many years ago about being the director of your own movie. And I wrote down everything that I wanted my life to look like. And then he says, put it away, put it in a drawer, and pull it out a year later. And Eddie and I still do this every new year. Every new year, we do this. And Eddie is really organized, much more than I am, and he has a folder for all this stuff. And he'll pull out these sheets of paper a year, sometimes 2 years later, and it's almost scary. I mean, Mark, you and Joe, you know, we're all alike with the law of attraction and Esther Hicks, so we all believe in like attracts like, and you get what you think about. But it really is amazing. So the call to action for this week, before the weekend's over, I challenge each of you to write down what you want your life to look like 5 years from today. So that's, 5 years, you don't have to be a CPA to know that's 2020. And it's not the TV show, it's the year 2020. What do you want your life to look like? And then on another piece of paper, what are 20 things specifically that you need to do to get that done? And hopefully your Zango business is going to be the vehicle. And then I want you to share that document with your sponsor or your upline mentor. So if you will commit to that, magic, absolute magic will start happening. So, I have a few minutes now that I'd like to say, and again, Mark and Joe, thank you so much for taking the time, not only to to listening to the audios that are in the university, but then to share your feelings about your take on these things and how they're impacting, because and we want more people to volunteer, because when you share what you're learning, it's like you're learning 5 to 10 times more by doing this. But when we talk about success through failure, this is, I can't remember now who quoted it, but he said, double your rate of failure if you want success. So, I think it's funny when people say, oh, I was in a network marketing company once and I didn't make any money. Oh, really? Usually when I'm talking to people, especially online, and I ask, what is your experience in network marketing? And, they often say, too many to list, but they're still looking. They're still looking for that golden nugget that could be their answer to peace of mind and freedom. And I always tell them, you're in good company, because if you look at successful people in network marketing, it's rare, really rare, that they hit it out of the park the first time. Most people that are virgins have a huge learning curve to go through. Now in Zango, because of the products being so strong and the science behind the products and the compensation plan, and we have about 140 plus people that are members of the million or multi-million dollar club, and I think about 30% of them were virgins, meaning they never did network marketing before. So if they can do it, what's your excuse? And, most people say, especially the masters, that success lies on the far side of failure. So it's almost like a test. It's like, if you can overcome frustration and you can overcome failure, you will win. There is no doubt at all. But there are stages of growth, and we all go through this. It doesn't matter how old you are or your education, because whatever you do professionally is very different than what we do in direct sales or network marketing or multi-level marketing, because it's really about how we serve others compared to a job where you're given a job description and you either do what the boss says or you get a pink slip and you're fired. But stage one is resistance and doubt, and then, duality and conflict. Then you finally accept it and it becomes a part of you, and you realize what you need to do to have a fulfilling life. And I love the quotes from Brian Tracy. This is the biggest, I think. Commit to CANI, constant and never-ending improvement. Commit yourself to lifelong learning. What are you reading at night before you go to bed? Are you getting up 30 minutes earlier to read your 10 pages a day? Just 10 pages a day, which means you'll probably finish a new book every single month. And it was interesting. When you walk into $1 million homes, often off the foyer, there is something called a library. And I took a screenshot of a whole bunch of libraries, and the one dead center happens to be mine in my office. So what does your library look like? We actually have 3 other bookshelves upstairs in my office, but they're spread out on different walls. So I'd love to see your library. What does it look like? And it better be jam-packed. And, of course, through the university, we have a huge suggested reading list, obviously, for your personal and professional growth. Now, when you're in the car, this drives me crazy that people listen to music. I don't care what genre you like to listen to. Listening to music is not an income-producing activity. So whether you have CDs to listen to or you've got a smart device, you should be, even if it's just 10 minutes to the supermarket, you need to make your automobile a university on wheels. Remember, it takes 6 exposures to get the full impact. And there are times that I'll listen to the same CD, the same one, over and over and over and over again. And guess what? When I listen to it to the second or third time, I'll go, wow, I don't remember hearing that before, because you get distracted. Your mind cannot remember everything. So commit to loading your car with CDs, and now with all our smart devices, everything's streaming online. And you've got to decide to take action. You've got to do things that are new and awkward or different. And if you don't do that, you're not growing. I remember when I first got into network marketing, I used to have 3x5 cards everywhere. And I used to have sheets of paper on the wall to refresh my memory as to what kinds of questions I would ask people until it became second nature. So make sure you write down at least one task that you're uncomfortable doing. What is it? Is it picking up the phone? Is it not knowing how to approach someone to give a Zalo Pro sample? What is it that makes you uncomfortable? Write it down, and then immediately the next day, start tweaking what it is that makes you uncomfortable until you feel really, really good about it. And that's how you learn and grow, and you just keep rinse and repeat, as they say at Zango. Just rinse and repeat and find another task that makes you uncomfortable so that you continue to grow. Because self-discipline is the magic that's going to make you unstoppable. And are there days you're not going to feel like talking to anyone? Are there days you're going to feel like not picking up the phone or talking to the waiter or hairdresser or the nail tech, and the list goes on and on? In fact, I'll give you an example. I had to call GoDaddy because apparently somebody was trying to get into my account, and they locked my account, and this guy was just delightful. It turns out I talked to him about Zango, and he's already looked at emails, not only through the university, but through my Zango Builder, and we're scheduled to talk on Friday. He wants to come on board. So even though I was stressed, I was tired, I didn't feel like it, remember the commitment. Never leave a situation without making something happen. And, of course, my favorite guy is Mr. Tracy. 9 rules of self-discipline. Hey, guys, this isn't rocket science. I mean, you don't have to be smart like Mark Barman and go to MIT and Stanford to know this kind of stuff. You've got to think clearly, daily, written, ink it. It must be on paper, daily goals. Time management is critical. You know, we all have smart devices. There isn't anybody, my 8-year-old grandson has a smart device, and in your smart device is a calendar. And you should have things written in your calendar, scheduled with alarms, so that when you go to bed at night, you look at your calendar for the next day, and you know exactly who you're supposed to call, what packages are supposed to be mailed, etc. You've got to commit to good health. You must save regularly, continue your hard work, continuous learning, and persistence. So, if you do not do this today, a year from now, you will wish you started today. And remember, I don't care how financially challenged you are. Nobody, I don't know anybody that I've ever talked to in my 20 years in network marketing that was in as sad a state as Eddie and I were. $450,000 in debt. Go to bed crying, I wake up crying, saying, how in the world are we going to get out of this mess? And we were already 52. So, if you look at life expectancy, even though I want to live to 120 with quality, I guess you could say my life was half over. We were temporarily out of funds. I just knew I was not supposed to live that way. And when I talk to people that are financially challenged, and I learned this through our Unlocking Our $1 Million Mindset calls, I ask this powerful question. When people say to me, for a $200 or a $500 investment, they say, I don't have the money, and they're in their 50s. Now, I know how that feels. because I was there, and I hated the way that felt. And I say, I know how you feel, because I was there. I felt the same way. So what are you going to do about it? How does it feel to be 53 years old and tell me you don't have an extra $500 to start the journey for the rest of your life to be different? I mean, that makes you want to cry. And we know absolutely we can help people if they'll just plug in. And as Napoleon Hill states, and I have this from chapter 8 in Think and Grow Rich, and if you haven't read it this year, it's in the university in an ebook, free. It was written in 1937. It's just amazing how much this guy knew in 1937, and the whole law of attraction thing came from Napoleon Hill. And he said, put large letters where you can see it every day. And this is his quote: tell the world what you intend to do, but first show it. In other words, walk your talk. Do the income-producing activities. Invest in learning, the constant, never-ending learning. Deeds, not words, are what count the most. And the big question is, there is a price to pay for success. So the key is, as Richard Branson says here in this slide, if someone offers you an amazing opportunity like we have with Zango, and you're not sure that you can do it, you say yes anyway, and learn as you go. Learn how to do it later. But there is a price to pay for success. And no one has extra time. We all have 24 hours in a day. So what are you going to do on your lunch break? Are you going to get up 30 minutes earlier? Are you going to go to bed 30 minutes later? Are you going to shut off the boob tube because there is no commissionable volume in TV? There is no CD in TV, and I learned that years ago. So our Mastery Success Academy is almost done, and I would like to end with this poem. And I've been using this poem for years, and if you're on the audio line and you can't read it, I'm going to read it to you now. When things go wrong, as they sometimes will, when the road you're trudging seems all uphill, when care is pressing you down a bit, rest if you must, but do not quit. Twists and turns, as every one of us sometimes learns. And many athletes turn about when they might have won had they stuck it out. Don't give up, though the pace seems slow. You may succeed with another blow. Success is failure turned inside out. The silver tint of the clouds of doubt, and you never can tell how close you are. It may be near when it seems so far. So stick to the fight when you're the hardest hit. It's when things seem worse that you must not quit. So if you want to live the life you dreamt about, ink it. Put it on paper. Wish it, dream it, ink it, and do it. And so what are you going to do now? Are you going to do the script of your perfect day? Are you going to write down the 20 questions? Are you going to identify the tasks that you need to stretch and do? Are you going to be at rush? Because if you're not at rush, shame on you, because events are not negotiable. And rush, trust me when I tell you this, will put your business at least 6 months ahead. So you must commit to rush. At Zango.com, you can go see it. We're also having the event after the event on Sunday, where about 40 leaders will be teaching and training on what they do and what they're going to do. Of course, it's very, very important that you are willing to commit to the 2 to 4 year journey for your success. This is not winning the lottery. This is about you becoming the person that other people want to follow. So if you want to fly like an eagle, you must be focused. You must relish challenges. And If you go and please join our Facebook group, which is facebook.com/groups/MMMFT, stands for Mentoring $1 Million Mindset Fast Track, and of course, facebook.com/Zango University. And in there, I'm going to put 2 videos. One is you can't take a duck to Eagle School. Just remember that, especially when you want things for people more than they want it for themselves. You can't turn a duck into an eagle. And even eagles need a push. And if you have not seen those videos, I believe they're both in the university, but I will put them in our Facebook group tomorrow. In order to sign up for the Sunday event, go to zangounited.com, and it's at the MGM where Rush is. And by the way, we do have some tickets we bought about a year ago that are discounted, because if you've been in Zango longer than 60 days, you know the tickets are $129. If you're brand new or just coming into Zango, the tickets are only $20 for brand new people. So if you need a discounted ticket, Eddie and I still have some left at $49. So just email me. But go to zangounited.com to pre-register, because the price goes up after the last day of July. So get the early bird special. And we also are having a sale on brochures for July. Here's the website, worldwide.com. You can go to www.shop.xuestore.com. Hopefully you can see the slides. And, of course, we archive all of the calls that we do in the library in Zango University under Faculty Training Archives. So that's going to conclude our call for tonight. And just know that you will win the prize. You will win because you know and believe you can. Don't forget that you've got a millionaire mind and you're saying yes to success. We love you. We appreciate you all. And we thank you for being a part of our family. Thank you all. And, of course, thanks to Mark and Joe for their just wonderful insight. Have a great week, guys.